Hello and welcome to the Bears and Lions podcast. This is the podcast where we challenge our present by viewing our past. I'm a firm believer that our greatest future lies within the correct view of our past, because when you actually look at it, you're going to see that there are so many people around you that have given you wisdom and helped make you feel validated. Now, I call this episode Who's on Your Couch, and I get into that very shortly in the podcast, but I did just want to say thank you to everybody that's watching or listening. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure that you hit that like and subscribe button. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcast, make sure that you hit that follow button and share this podcast with a friend or two. I really hope that you enjoy this conversation, and I'll see you on the other side. I call this conversation, Who's on Your Couch? Because if you could sit down with three people in history, whether they're alive or dead, sit down on a couch with them and talk with them about the mysteries of the world, who would you sit down with and why? Would you want to sit down with somebody who's just smart, a mastermind, who could give you answers to the universe, or you could learn something from them? Or would you want to sit down with a famous artist or a famous musician and just soak in the beauty and how they speak? Would you want to sit down with a family member that has passed away and just hear their voice again, and just embrace that moment? For me, I've been thinking about it, and I think I would want to sit down with Jesus, Charles Darwin, and King Solomon, who's known as the smartest or the wisest human to ever walk this planet. Now, yours may vary, and as soon as I asked you that, you probably had three people come to your mind. And recently, I was on a work trip, and during one of our sessions, this question was asked, and I loved people's answers. They varied. Somebody said Jesus, Hitler, and Nostradamus. Somebody else said they wanted to sit down with Taylor Swift and Matt Damon and Oppenheimer. And a few others had some really great answers of just incredible people. I think it's a great question to ask, is because it forces you to think, what do you want to learn? Who would you want to embrace or be in their company with? It kind of helps you develop how you would process that. Do you want to sit down with somebody who's famous that's alive right now, like a Taylor Swift, who's just very smart? Would you want to sit down with a Kylie Jenner, who, somebody who has built a business and an empire out of, yes, they were given much, but they built the business themselves? A Paris Hilton would be a good example of that as well. Or would you want to sit down with somebody who maybe is that rags to riches story, maybe an athlete? Maybe you want to sit down with a Michael Jordan and talk about just the competitive nature. I think, me personally, it would be really cool to sit down with a Kobe Bryant. Even though he's passed away recently, he had such a drive, that Mamba mentality. Would be really interesting to hear their perspective. But I do think that this question is laced with a little bit of difficulty, because if it's only three people, what type of conversations do you want to overhear them have as well? Because they're not just talking with only you, they'd be talking with you and each other. So then you start thinking of who would mesh well and who would have good conversation and who might not have a great conversation, who maybe we don't want to put them on a couch together because it would just become an argument. I remember learning about history and learning about J.R.R. Tolkien, the guy who wrote Lord of the Rings, and C.S. Lewis, the man who wrote the Chronicles of Narnia and many other books, would sit down and have these deep discussions about life and creating universes. And you have Middle Earth and Lord of the Rings versus Narnia and this whole world with Aslan and this exciting adventures on both sides that are unique. But I wonder if you would want to just sit in on them talk and have them talk and just listen to the creativity. And as I've kind of gotten older, and I was thinking about this over this last week, is I wonder if what I'm going through now has impacted who I would want to sit down with. For instance, right now I'm going through, a change in life. I would love to hear some unique perspectives. And of course, in today's age, we have a lot of evolutionary thought. So that's why I think of Charles Darwin. I think it would be really interesting to talk to him about his studies. And then Jesus would be interesting to talk to because he was a human. That is physically provable that he was a human that walked the planet. That would be really interesting to talk to him and Charles Darwin about creation versus the evolutionary thought, and maybe how they do have some understanding together with the fact that humans are evolutionary, but that doesn't mean that we all come from evolution. And then King Solomon, a man of Proverbs. I'm currently reading through the Proverbs in Scripture, and I think that would impact my thought process right now. I think it would just be awesome to sit down with him. Out of all the things that he learned, out of all the things that he pursued in life, out of all the riches and all the wisdom that he had, at the end of his last writings in Ecclesiastes, he says it's all meaningless in the end. There's only a little bit about life that is most important, and that's that you love your God and that you love the people around you, that you build this world into a kingdom of joy and help and things of that nature. But it's ultimately that you love and serve your Lord. Love and serve the Lord is what Solomon said. And so I think that that's why that would impact who I'm talking with on my couch. But I want to kind of delve in deeper because you might have your 3 people now. By now, you probably have your 3 people. And it's initially, these are your 3 people, right? Because 6 months ago, your 3 people may be different. 6 months ago, my 3 people may be different. 6 months from now, my 3 people may be different. But I also wonder about this conversation is how mature was I if this question was 4 years ago versus now? Or what I would be, how mature I would be in 4 years versus now? Because I'm wondering if we would be able to even comprehend or have the in-depth conversations and gain from them the way that we would like, or if it's like a TikTok that we listen to and we get inspired by for a moment and then we go on about our day and completely forget everything. Because imagine you're having a conversation with somebody like an Albert Einstein who is vastly, just massively intelligent, or you have a conversation with a Alexander the Great, who conquered nearly all of the world during his time, and then you walk away from that conversation and go back to your life without it impacting you at all. See, that's the conversation that I'm now having with myself is, could I actually sit down with a conversation with King Solomon, who's regarded as one of the wisest humans to ever walk the earth, and would I sit down with him and have a great conversation and then go back to my life and live it the exact same way? Or would that conversation impact me? Maybe I sit down with Jesus and have a conversation with him, and after I've had that conversation with him, would my life drastically change where I realize, oh my goodness, this guy is the Son of God. This guy actually died and rose from the dead. What he says is true. Would that change the way I looked at the world? Would it change the way I looked at people? Hey everybody, thank you so much for listening to the podcast. If you want to connect with me further, you can find me on my social media. I'm most active on X, which is formerly known as Twitter, at Kyle Vaught. That's Kylev as in Victor ATT. But I'm also trying to become a little bit more active on Instagram and Threads, which is at Kyle_Vaught. So shoot me a follow, shoot me a message, say hi, or maybe there's a topic that you want me to discuss on a future podcast episode. Either way, I cannot wait to get connected. Now let's get back to the conversation. Now that I've kind of brought that question up to myself, it's kind of just sat with me. And I think whatever we're currently going through in life, it impacts our day-to-day conversations with the people around us, right? When we feel on top of the world, we may want to celebrate, so we're a little louder. When we feel chaotic, we may just want to find a friend that's calm to talk to. When we feel lost, maybe lost in our thoughts, we just want to find a friend that makes us feel found. And I wonder how many times I've entered conversations with no regard to what the other person may need in that moment. And I fail to provide that need because I'm so focused on myself. If I'm sitting down with 3 people that are incredible people throughout history, whether alive or dead, am I going into that conversation, bringing myself with the mentality of, okay, this is what I'm going through and I need to learn this and I need to learn this and I need to understand this and it's all about me? Or would I be willing to sit down and instead of have the focus on me, have the focus on them and say, I'm going through some things, but I just want to listen to what you would say. See, we do this in our day-to-day life. It's easy to do it with hypotheticals, right? It's really easy to do it with hypotheticals of, oh, we're talking to Jesus, or we're talking to Hitler, or we're talking to Taylor Swift, or we're talking to whoever. It's easy to say what we would act like that, but we have incredible people in our lives, day-to-day lives. We have incredible people that we can talk to. We can talk to our parents in some cases. In some cases, you can't. Some cases, you don't have the relationship with your siblings to have these conversations. In some cases, you have lost a parent or a loved one already, so you can't have these conversations. And it's so much, life is so go, 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 go that you're not willing to sit down on the couch and have a conversation with your parents or have a conversation with your best friends about what's actually going on. Because maybe they feel lost and they just need somebody to make them feel found. And you can be that person who sits down on that couch and just says, hey, I know where you're at in life and I think you're doing great. Yeah, it's not all perfect, but we're working on it together and I can see the progress you've made. What type of impact would you have on people around you if you were able to have that conversation? See, as I think about who's on my couch, alive or dead, who would I want to sit down with? It makes me challenge myself and makes me uncomfortable because I'm wondering who is currently in my life that I can be that person that I can sit on that couch with. Because if I was honest, I only have a couple of really close friends. There are a few people who I haven't seen in years that I need to make some time to go see and sit on a couch and have a conversation. And it's really challenging because now other people are coming to my mind where these are the people in my life that they've made me feel found when I've felt lost. There are people in my life who have celebrated with me when everything's going well, and they've cried with me when everything has gone bad. But they've been there on my couch. So now I want to ask you, who's on your couch right now? Who are the people in your life that you need to shoot a text or give them a phone call and just say, hey, I appreciate you. Thank you for being in my life. Thank you for being somebody who helps me feel found when I feel a little bit lost. Thank you for being the calm in my life when everything else is going crazy. Maybe it's a spouse, maybe it's a loved one, maybe it's a sibling, maybe it's a best friend. But I hope that whoever is on your couch right now, you can have in-depth conversations, good conversations with. And maybe it's not the Jesus, or maybe it's not, King Solomon, but maybe that person is really wise. And if you just laid aside yourself for a second, you would hear the wisdom that they have to say. Maybe you just sit down and say, look, I'm going through some things, but I just want to hear what your thoughts are on this. I don't need to reply. I don't want to rebuttal. I just want to be here. I overheard a podcast recently, and I thought it was unique because it was talking about Theo Vaughn and something that just uniquely happened where a guy was talking about something difficult and he started breaking down and crying. And Theo Vaughn said, we can pause and just sit here for a second. We don't even have to talk. We can just sit here. And when I heard that, I've never felt so impressed and excited that there's a human out there that would be able to have the wherewithal to simply say, I'm just going to sit with you. Instead of what I'm used to and what I've done so much in my life is I'm here for you, and then I start inflating a moment. You're doing great. It's okay. You're doing fantastic. You know, it's okay to cry. It's okay to be upset, anything like that. Like, it's me talking instead of just simply acknowledging the fact that that person may not need me to say a darn thing. And instead, maybe I just need to say, it's okay to sit here. We can just sit here in silence. We don't even have to talk. And I wonder how much that might validate a person and encourage a person to be vulnerable and to grow. And I'm wondering how many conversations I've failed where I did not do what Theo Von did. And instead of saying, yeah, we can just sit here, I filled the silence with myself, my arrogance, or my thought of trying to do something for the person when they didn't need me to do anything at all. They just needed me to be there. And maybe that's me being difficult on myself. Maybe that's being me, being a little hard on myself. But I do think it's valuable to ask yourself these type of questions and challenge your thought process so that you're not just so focused on what you're going through and what you're doing and how you're doing and who's going to teach you this or what's your next step with that. I hear so much about focus on you. It's good to focus on you. But I'm wondering how much of the relationship part of humanity that we cast aside or that we lose in ourselves. We lose that ability to have those in-depth conversations because we're so used to doing multiple things. We're so used to multitasking and texting and talking on the phone, where I wonder if you had an opportunity to sit on the phone with somebody for an hour and just listen to them. Would you be able to do that? See, I've struggled with this thought, and I'm the type of person who likes to talk. You probably have noticed. But it's something that has been on my mind since that question is, I wonder what 3 people in my life that are alive that I need to sit down on the couch with and just simply say, I don't want to talk. I just want to listen because I think you are wise and you're somebody who has impacted my life. That's going to do it for this conversation. I really appreciate all of you who listen, and I appreciate all of you who are tuning in, sharing the podcast, dropping follows on social media. Again, please drop me a follow on social media. I'd love to connect with you. You can find me on X or Instagram. My link's in the bio if you want to follow along with that. But I always share those. I really do enjoy connecting with you. I really think that this podcast is going to just continue to bloom. It's been really exciting. I've missed episodes, and I'm not perfect, and I'm not trying to be, but I really get excited whenever I get a chance to sit down and record these. But I do hope that you will connect with me. If there's anything that I can encourage you with, any subjects that you want me to talk about, I would love to talk to you or share research, things like that. It gets me excited, and I love doing this. So I hope that all of you will have a wonderful week. I hope that you will remember to give grace, show love, and as always, stay stellar. Peace.